He didn't think so when he went back in.
The shot cracked through the smoke before anyone understood what had just happened, a sharp sound swallowed almost instantly by the roar of the fire, and for a single suspended second the entire street seemed to forget how to breathe as the old man dropped to one knee beside the dog, his hand already finding the thick fur at its neck like he had done 1,000 times before, steady, certain, unshaken, while the flames behind them climbed higher into the late Texas sky, turning the quiet neighborhood into a wavering mirage of heat and ash. 20 minutes earlier the road had been empty except for the slow rhythm of boots against pavement and the soft jingle of a metal tag, Arthur Hale moving at the same measured pace he always did, shoulders slightly forward, eyes scanning without ever seeming to look, and beside him the dog, Rex, older now, the gray around his muzzle catching the low sun, but still carrying himself with that same quiet alertness, each step deliberate, each pause purposeful, the kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself to be felt. A screen door creaked somewhere down the block, a lawn sprinkler clicked in steady arcs, and for anyone watching it was nothing more than an old veteran walking his aging dog through another ordinary evening in a town that had long since stopped noticing men like him. Then the wind shifted, just slightly, and Rex stopped, not hesitating but locking in place, head lifting, ears forward, body tightening with a precision that didn't belong to age, and Arthur noticed without looking, the way his hand stilled at his side, the way his breathing changed, subtle, controlled, and in the distance a thin ribbon of smoke began to rise above the rooftops, dark against the fading light. The first shout came seconds later, distant but urgent, followed by the brittle crack of something giving way, and suddenly the quiet street fractured into motion as a woman's voice carried through the air, sharp with panic. Neighbors stepping out onto porches, someone dialing, someone pointing, but Arthur didn't move with them, he moved before them, already turning, already calculating, while Rex stepped forward in perfect sync, not waiting for a command that didn't need to be spoken. The house at the end of the block was already breathing fire by the time they reached it, windows glowing, heat rolling out in waves that bent the air, and a man stood near the curb shouting something no one could quite make out, his voice breaking against the chaos, while another neighbor tried to hold him back, and somewhere inside, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a child crying. Arthur stopped just long enough to read the structure, eyes tracing the frame, the angle of the roof, the direction of the smoke, and Rex shifted beside him, nose lifting, catching something deeper. Something hidden beneath the burning wood and melting plastic, and for a brief moment the world narrowed to the space between them, man and dog, years of silent understanding compressed into a single glance. Then Arthur stepped forward into the heat, and Rex went with him, not as a pet, not as a companion, but as something far older, far more precise, moving low and fast as they crossed the threshold where the air turned thick and the light turned violent, disappearing into the blaze while the rest of the street stood frozen, watching what they thought was just an old man and his dog walk straight into something no one else would dare approach. The heat closed in around them the moment they crossed the threshold, thick and pressing, turning every breath into something heavy that had to be earned, and the world outside vanished behind a curtain of smoke and orange light as Rex dropped low to the floor, moving with practiced intent, his body cutting through the haze while Arthur followed just a step behind, one hand brushing along the wall, mapping the space without needing to see it, counting distance, reading structure, the way he had learned long ago in places where hesitation had consequences. The floor creaked under shifting weight, a sharp crack echoing somewhere deeper inside the house, and from beyond a partially collapsed hallway came that same thin cry, weaker now, buried beneath the noise of the fire, but still there, still holding. Rex paused at the corner, head tilting, nose working the air with small precise movements, filtering through layers of heat and smoke until he locked onto something specific. Something alive, and without waiting he turned sharply, pushing forward into a narrower passage where visibility dropped to almost nothing, the light flickering in uneven bursts that cast long shadows across the walls. Arthur stayed close, his steps measured, conserving movement, every action controlled, as if the chaos around him followed rules only he could see, and when a piece of debris shifted above them he adjusted instinctively, guiding them along a path that kept just enough space between them and the worst of the heat. Then they found her, a woman slumped near the base of a doorway, one arm stretched outward as if she had been reaching for something just beyond her grasp. And Rex was already there, nudging her shoulder. Gently, checking, confirming, before shifting again, pulling Arthur's attention toward the faint sound that continued beyond. Arthur moved quickly but without panic, lifting the woman with careful efficiency, positioning her weight so it would not slow them more than necessary, then setting her down just inside a clearer pocket of air, a place he marked in his mind as a waypoint, not an end. Because he knew there was still someone else inside, Rex had not waited, already pushing ahead, his silhouette barely visible through the smoke as he followed the sound, and when Arthur reached the next room he saw the outline of a small figure near the far wall, curled tight, the child's voice now reduced to a fragile rhythm that could disappear at any moment. Rex approached first, lowering himself, pressing close in a way that steadied rather than startled, and the child's movement shifted, instinctively responding to that presence, to something calm inside the chaos, while Arthur closed the distance in long controlled strides, lifting the child securely, turning back the way they had come with the same deliberate focus. The return path felt narrower, hotter, the air more unstable, but Arthur did not rush, because rushing meant mistakes, and mistakes were not an option, and Rex stayed at his side, adjusting pace, guiding subtly when the path shifted, when the smoke thickened, when the light changed direction, until at last the outline of the doorway reappeared ahead, brighter. Now, closer, the sound of voices filtering in from outside, distant but growing, and as they stepped back into the open air the weight of the heat fell away just enough for the world to return, the shouting, the movement, the sudden rush of people converging, and Arthur lowered the child carefully into waiting hands while Rex stood beside him, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, silent, watchful, as if the job was not yet done. The voices hit them all at once, overlapping commands, urgent footsteps, the sharp metallic rattle of equipment being pulled from trucks as firefighters flooded the street with controlled chaos, their presence loud and immediate in contrast to the quiet precision that had just unfolded inside the house, and Arthur stepped back instinctively, creating space, his job already complete in his mind, while Rex remained close at his side, posture steady, eyes tracking movement without reacting, the way he had been trained to observe without interfering. Hands reached for the woman, for the child, pulling them towards safety, voices rising with relief and confusion, and somewhere in that noise a man broke through, pushing past the line of responders with a desperation that cut through everything else, his face drawn tight, eyes fixed on the small figure now wrapped in a blanket, and when the child stirred, weak but alive, the man dropped to his knees beside them, calling out in a voice that carried both fear and disbelief, a single word repeated like it might anchor the moment in reality. Arthur watched only briefly, then turned slightly away, his attention already shifting back to the structure, to the changing rhythm of the fire, to the angles of collapse that others were now beginning to read, and he placed a steady hand on Rex's neck, a quiet signal, a grounding point, the same gesture he had used countless times before, though now it lingered a fraction longer, as if acknowledging something unspoken. The first wave of firefighters moved in with practiced urgency, hoses uncoiling, commands snapping through the air, and among them a tall man in a captain's jacket stepped forward, his presence cutting through the noise not by volume but by authority, his eyes moving quickly from the house to the survivors, then to Arthur and Rex standing just outside the perimeter, still, composed. Out of place in a scene defined by motion, he approached with purpose, boots striking the pavement in quick, deliberate steps, and when he stopped a few feet away his gaze narrowed, taking in the soot on Arthur's clothes, the position of Rex at his side, the absence of any visible identification, and there was something in his expression that shifted, not yet accusation, but not trust either, a calculation that leaned toward doubt. "Sir, step back from the scene," he said, voice controlled but firm, already gesturing for space as other firefighters moved around them, and Arthur did not argue, he simply nodded once and took a single step back, enough to comply, not enough to disengage, while Rex mirrored the movement exactly, maintaining that same quiet alignment. The captain's eyes flicked briefly to the dog, lingering just a moment longer than necessary, as if trying to place something he could not quite name, then back to Arthur, scanning for answers that were not offered, and behind him the operation intensified, water striking flame, steam rising in thick clouds that blurred the edges of everything, turning the scene into shifting layers of light and shadow. A younger firefighter moved closer, glancing between Arthur and Rex with open suspicion, whispering something that carried just enough edge to be heard but not enough to be challenged, and the captain did not respond. But the tension settled anyway, subtle, almost invisible, like a line drawn in the air that no one acknowledged but everyone felt. Arthur remained where he was, silent, composed, his presence steady against the rising noise, while Rex stood beside him, unmoving, the faint glint of a worn metal tag catching the light as it swayed gently with each measured breath, unnoticed by most, unremarkable to anyone who did not know what they were looking at, just another detail in a scene already too full to process. And yet something about it lingered, waiting for the moment when someone would finally see it for what it was. The tension did not arrive all at once, it settled in slowly, like heat that lingers even after the flames begin to recede, carried in sideways glances and unfinished questions, in the way a few of the younger firefighters kept looking back at Arthur and Rex as if trying to reconcile what they had just seen with what they believed should have happened, and the captain, Daniel Brooks, stood at the center of it, his focus split between command and doubt, issuing orders with practiced clarity. While something in the back of his mind refused to let go of the image of the old man walking out of that fire without hesitation, steam rolled across the street in thick waves as water met heat, turning the air into a shifting veil that distorted distance and sound, and through it all Arthur remained. Still, not withdrawn but not involved, his presence steady and contained, while Rex adjusted his stance slightly, weight shifting forward just enough to stay aligned with him, eyes never settling in one place for long, always reading, always aware. A firefighter moved past them carrying equipment, then slowed, glancing back with a frown that quickly turned into a whisper to the man beside him. A quiet exchange that carried more assumption than fact, and soon there were more of those looks, more of those low voices, each one adding a layer to something that had not yet been spoken aloud. Daniel noticed it, not directly at first, but in the change of rhythm, the way his team's focus bent slightly toward the edge of the scene, and when he followed that shift with his own eyes they landed again on Arthur and the dog, still standing there, still composed, as if they belonged to a different version of the moment entirely. He walked toward them again, slower this time, more deliberate, his boots pressing into the damp pavement, his jaw set not with anger but with the need to resolve something that did not sit right, and when he stopped in front of Arthur there was a pause, brief but noticeable, as if both men understood that whatever came next would define the space between them. "Sir, I need you to tell me exactly what you were doing inside that structure," Daniel said, his voice even, controlled, but edged with authority that expected compliance, and Arthur met his gaze without resistance, without explanation, simply holding that same quiet stillness that had carried him through the fire, a stillness that did not challenge but did not yield either. The pause stretched just long enough to draw attention, just long enough for others nearby to slow, to listen without appearing to, and one of the younger firefighters stepped closer, his tone less measured, more certain, filling the silence with assumption, suggesting things that had not been proven, connecting presence with blame in the simplest way possible. Rex reacted before Arthur did, not aggressively, not with any display that could be called threatening, but with a subtle shift forward, a tightening of posture, a line drawn that was invisible yet unmistakable, his body placing itself between Arthur and the encroaching tension with a precision that came from years of doing exactly that. Daniel's eyes dropped briefly to the dog, catching that movement, and something in his expression hardened, not from fear but from interpretation, from a decision made too quickly under pressure, and the air seemed to tighten around them as voices rose just enough to break the thin layer of control that had held the scene together. Arthur's hand moved then, resting lightly against Rex's neck, a calming touch, a quiet command, and the dog responded instantly, easing back into stillness, but the moment had already shifted, already crossed into something else, something less certain, and in that space of misunderstanding, where urgency met assumption, the next choice came faster than it should have, shaped not by what was true, but by what seemed to be. The moment did not explode, it collapsed, folding in on itself with a speed that left no room for correction, no space for second thoughts, just a single irreversible action born from tension that had been building without anyone fully acknowledging it, and then everything went still, not silent, but still in a way that stripped the movement out of the scene, as if the world itself had paused to register what had just happened. Arthur did not react the way anyone expected. There was no sudden motion, no raised voice, no visible anger, only a slow, deliberate shift as he lowered himself to one knee beside Rex, his hand finding the dog's neck with the same calm certainty he had shown inside the fire, fingers pressing gently into the fur as if confirming something only he could feel, and Rex, who had faced heat and chaos without hesitation, now lay quiet, his breathing shallow but present, his eyes still alert. Still searching, not for threat, but for Arthur. Around them the scene struggled to resume, voices returning in fragments, commands half-spoken, uncertainty creeping into the edges of authority as the firefighters who had moments ago been moving with clear purpose now hesitated, their focus fractured by the weight of what they did not fully understand. Daniel Brooks stood at the center of it, his posture rigid, his expression caught somewhere between justification and something he refused to name, his eyes fixed on the space in front of him but not truly seeing it. Replaying the moment in a loop that no longer felt as certain as it had seconds before, and behind him one of the younger firefighters shifted uneasily, the confidence from earlier replaced by something quieter, something closer to doubt. Arthur's hand remained steady on Rex, his thumb brushing once across the worn leather collar, and that was when it happened, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a subtle clarity that cut through the noise more effectively than any shout. The small metal tag at Rex's neck caught the light, swinging slightly as Arthur adjusted his grip, revealing a surface that was not polished but aged, edges softened by time, letters engraved deep enough to endure years of wear. For most, it was just a tag, another detail lost in the aftermath, but for one man standing just beyond the immediate circle, it was something else entirely. Captain Luis Ortega had been moving along the perimeter, checking positions, maintaining order, but his attention shifted the moment that faint glint reached him, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer, then another, drawn not by curiosity but by recognition that had not yet fully formed. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on the tag as it settled against Rex's fur, and for a brief second the sounds around him faded, replaced by a memory he had not expected to revisit, a briefing room, a list of names spoken with weight, call signs that were not supposed to be forgotten. He crouched slightly, not touching, not interrupting, just looking, and when he read the engraving his breath caught in a way he could not control, his hand tightening at his side as the pieces aligned with a precision that left no room for doubt. The name was not long, not elaborate, but it carried something that changed everything, something that shifted the meaning of the entire scene in an instant, and Ortega straightened slowly, his eyes moving from the tag to Arthur, then to Daniel, and back again, the tension in his posture no longer uncertainty but realization. He did not speak immediately, because some truths demanded a moment before they could be carried into the open, but the silence around him deepened, as if the world itself was waiting for him to say what he had just understood, and in that pause, the balance of the entire scene began to tilt in a direction no one else saw coming. Ortega did not raise his voice when he finally spoke. But something in the tone cut clean through the noise, a quiet authority that did not ask for attention yet received it instantly, and the few firefighters closest to him slowed, then stopped entirely, their focus shifting as he stepped forward, eyes still locked on the small metal tag resting against Rex's collar as if it carried more weight than anything else in the scene. "Captain Brooks," he said, measured, controlled, and Daniel turned, irritation already forming at the interruption before. It faltered, just slightly, at the look on Ortega's face, a look that did not match the situation as he understood it, something steadier, heavier, and far more certain. Ortega took another step closer, not toward Daniel this time, but toward Arthur and Rex, his movements deliberate, respectful in a way that contrasted sharply with the tension still hanging in the air, and when he stopped he did not reach down, did not touch. He simply inclined his head just enough to read the engraving again. Confirming what he already knew, what he had recognized the moment the light hit that worn piece of metal. "Do you know what that says?" he asked, not accusing, not aggressive, just direct, and Daniel's jaw tightened, his patience thinning under pressure. "It is a tag," he replied, dismissive, the answer coming too quickly, too certain, as if certainty alone could hold the situation in place. Ortega exhaled slowly, a controlled release, then straightened, his gaze moving across the small circle of men who were now watching, waiting, sensing the shift without understanding it, and when he spoke again the words carried something different, not volume, but gravity. "That is not just a tag," he said, each word placed with precision, "that is a call sign," and the phrase landed unevenly among the group, some recognizing it immediately, others not yet grasping the significance, but all of them feeling the weight behind it. Daniel frowned, confusion replacing irritation. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but there was less force behind it now, less certainty, and Ortega held his gaze, steady, unblinking. "Raven-6, he said, the name spoken clearly, without hesitation, and for a brief moment nothing happened, no reaction, no movement, just a pause as the meaning began to spread, slow at first, then faster as recognition caught in the minds of those who had heard it before, in briefings, in stories that were not told often, names that were not repeated lightly. One of the older firefighters shifted his stance, eyes narrowing, a flicker of memory surfacing, while another glanced at the dog again, this time not with suspicion, but with uncertainty that bordered on something else entirely. Daniel remained still, but the ground beneath his certainty had already begun to move, small fractures forming where there had been solid ground only moments before, and he looked from Ortega to the dog, then to Arthur, seeing the same elements but now unable to fit them into the same conclusion. Ortega did not rush, did not push, he simply let the name exist in the air between them, knowing it would do its work, knowing that some truths did not need to be forced, only revealed, and behind them the fire continued to die down, the roar fading into a lower, steadier sound, as if even the chaos of the scene was beginning to yield to something quieter, something heavier, something that had just entered the space and was not going to leave. The name did not echo, it settled, heavy and deliberate, pressing into the space between them until even the smallest movement seemed out of place, and Daniel felt it before he understood it, a shift that did not come from the fire or the chaos around him but from something far more precise, something that carried history with it, and he looked again at the dog, really looked this time, not as a threat, not as a problem to solve, but as something he had misread entirely. Ortega's gaze remained steady, watching the realization begin to form, not forcing it, just allowing it to surface, and when Daniel finally spoke his voice had changed, the sharp edge from before dulled by uncertainty. "That does not mean anything here," he said, but the words lacked conviction, sounding more like a question than a statement. Ortega did not argue, he reached slowly into his jacket instead, pulling out his phone with controlled movements, and for a moment the scene held again, waiting, as he scrolled through something only he understood, his thumb moving with quiet urgency until he found what he was looking for. Then he turned the screen slightly, not fully offering it, just enough for Daniel to see. The image was not clear from a distance, but the outline was unmistakable, a dog, younger, stronger, standing beside a handler in a place that looked nothing like a quiet Texas street, and beneath it, a designation, simple, direct, the same name that now hung in the air between them. Daniel leaned in despite himself, his eyes narrowing as he tried to reconcile the image with what stood before him, and behind him one of the older firefighters stepped closer as well, drawn in by the gravity of the moment, his breath catching just slightly as recognition hit him faster, harder. "I have heard that name before," the older man said quietly, almost to himself, and Ortega nodded once, not in confirmation, but in acknowledgement, then looked back to Daniel. "That unit was not public," he said, voice low, controlled, but the stories made their way through the right channels, and he let that sit for a moment before adding, "They did not send dogs like that into situations they expected to fail." The implication landed heavier than any accusation, and Daniel's shoulders shifted, not outwardly, but enough to break the rigid certainty he had been holding on to, his eyes moving again to Arthur, who had not spoken once through any of it, still kneeling, still steady, his hand resting against Rex with the same quiet presence as before, as if none of this required explanation. The child's voice carried faintly from behind, a soft call that cut through the tension, and Daniel turned instinctively, his focus snapping to the small figure now sitting upright, wrapped in a blanket, eyes searching through the crowd until they found him, and the word came again, clearer this time, "Dad," and something inside him gave way, not all at once, but enough to let the truth begin to take shape. He looked back at Rex, then at Arthur, and the scene rewrote itself in his mind, the entry into the fire, the timing, the precision, the outcome. Details that had been dismissed now aligning with a clarity that left no room for the version he had believed just moments earlier. Ortega stepped back slightly, not to withdraw, but to create space for that realization to complete itself, because this was no longer about proving anything, it was about allowing the truth to surface without resistance, and around them the rest of the crew had gone quiet, not ordered, not instructed, but drawn into stillness by something they could all feel even if they did not yet fully understand it. the kind of silence that does not come from absence of sound, but from the presence of something that demands respect. The sound reached them before the vehicles did, a low, controlled rumble that did not belong to emergency response but to something more deliberate, more measured, and as heads turned down the street the flashing lights appeared, not chaotic but aligned, moving with a precision that immediately shifted the atmosphere, and one by one the firefighters stepped back without being told, creating space they did not realize they were giving. The convoy slowed to a stop at the edge of the scene. Engines idling in quiet authority, and for a brief moment no one moved, as if the arrival itself required acknowledgement before anything else could follow. Then the door of the lead vehicle opened and a man stepped out, his posture straight, his presence carrying the kind of weight that did not need introduction, and those who recognized it felt it instantly, a subtle tightening, a reflexive awareness that something far beyond their immediate chain of command had just entered their world. General Marcus Whitaker did not rush, he walked forward at a steady pace, his eyes already scanning, not searching for answers but confirming what he had been told, and when his gaze found Arthur and Rex the rest of the scene seemed to fade into the background, reduced to noise that no longer mattered. He stopped a few feet away, taking in the sight fully, the soot, the stillness, the position of the old man beside the dog. And for a moment there was nothing, no words, no movement, just recognition, deep and absolute. Then without hesitation he came to attention and raised his hand in a crisp, deliberate salute, the motion precise, unwavering, and it landed like a shockwave through the gathered crowd, not loud, but undeniable. No one spoke, no one moved, because the meaning of that gesture was clear even to those who did not understand its full depth, respect given at the highest level, not for show, not for ceremony, but for something earned long before this moment existed. Daniel felt it hit him harder than anything else, the final piece that shattered what little certainty he had left. His eyes locked on the scene as it unfolded in front of him, the general standing in full salute to a dog he had dismissed, to a man he had questioned, and the weight of that realization settled into his chest with a force that left no room for defense. Whitaker lowered his hand slowly, his gaze shifting briefly to Daniel, not with anger, not with accusation, but with a clarity that was far worse, an understanding that required no explanation. Then he spoke, his voice calm, steady, carrying across the silence with absolute control. "That dog has pulled men out of places we could not reach," he said, each word deliberate, and he did it without hesitation, and he paused just long enough for that to land before adding, "Today was no different." Behind them, the child's voice rose again, stronger now, calling out, and Daniel turned instinctively, his son reaching toward him, alive, breathing, present. And the truth completed itself in that moment with a clarity that could not be undone, the connection undeniable, the outcome inescapable. When he looked back at Rex, he no longer saw a question, he saw the answer he had failed to recognize, and the silence that followed was not empty, it was full, heavy with everything that had just been revealed, everything that could not be taken back, and everything that would not be forgotten. The days that followed did not carry the noise of that afternoon, they carried something quieter, something that settled deep and stayed, and the town that had once overlooked Arthur Hale now moved differently around him, not with attention, not with spectacle, but with a kind of awareness that did not need to be spoken aloud. The funeral was held at the edge of the same town, beneath a wide Texas sky that stretched endlessly above rows of still figures, uniforms pressed, boots aligned, every detail measured with care, and at the center of it all rested a small casket draped with a flag, its surface smooth, its weight far greater than its size suggested. Arthur stood beside it, not at the front, not elevated, just present, his posture the same as it had always been, steady, composed, his hand resting lightly against the edge of the casket as if anchoring something that did not need words. The wind moved gently across the field, carrying with it the faint rustle of fabric, the low murmur of distant engines, and somewhere beyond the line of gathered service members a few townspeople stood quietly, watching from a respectful distance, their understanding incomplete but their silence sincere. General Whitaker stepped forward when the time came, his movements deliberate, his expression unchanged, and as he placed a small medal onto the folded flag there was no announcement, no list of achievements, just a brief pause that carried more weight than any speech could have, a recognition that did not require explanation. The name RAVEN-6 was not spoken loudly, it did not need to be, it existed in the space between those who understood, held in memory, carried forward without display. Daniel Brooks stood near the back, his uniform clean, his posture rigid, but nothing about him felt steady, his eyes fixed on the casket, then shifting to Arthur, then back again, as if searching for something he knew he would not find, and when his son reached for his hand he held it tightly, grounding himself in the one thing that had been returned to him, the one truth that remained undeniable. He stepped forward once, just a single pace, then stopped, the distance between him and Arthur unchanged, not by command, not by judgment, but by something far more final, something that could not be crossed with words. Arthur did not look at him, not out of refusal, not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to exchange, nothing that needed to be said, and when the final salute was given, it was not dramatic, it was precise, unified, a line of hands raised in quiet acknowledgement, held for a moment that seemed to stretch longer than it should, then lowered in perfect control. The ceremony ended without applause, without movement, just a gradual return to stillness as people stepped back, as vehicles started in the distance, as the world resumed its rhythm. But something had shifted permanently beneath it, something that would not fade with time. Arthur remained a moment longer, his hand resting once more against the casket, then he turned and walked away at the same measured pace he had always carried, alone now, but not diminished, his presence as steady as ever, as if the weight of everything that had happened did not need to be carried, because it had already been lived. And behind him, in the quiet that followed, the meaning of it all settled into something simple, something that did not demand attention, only understanding, that respect is never claimed in the moment, it is revealed by the life that came before it, and remembered long after the silence returns.